The room is quiet. A chandelier's faint glow upsets the shadows on the high ceiling. On the polished table lies a single document, unsigned, its edges crisp, the paper still warm from the printer. It bears the title, Lease of Royal Lodge, Duke of York, 2003. Meanwhile, across Windsor Great Park, the future of a royal branch is being decided. Two sisters stand at the crossroads of legacy and irrelevance. Their names are Princess Beatrice of York and Princess Eugenie of York. The institution around them is shifting underfoot, and the privileges they were born into now read more like burdens than blessings. Before we dive in, there's something I need to share with you. Over the past few days, thousands have watched these stories unfold, but most haven't subscribed. If you're one of them, I invite you now to join us. Subscribe to Crownverse so you never miss the next chapter in this unfolding royal history. They were born into a dynasty. The bloodline promised status, visibility, and purpose. Their grandfather's reign, their father's naval career, their mother's media-friendly presence, each was a pillar of privilege. Beatrice, born in 1988, Eugenie, born in 1990. Their childhoods were punctuated by car rides through Windsor Great Park, by summer holidays overshadowed by palace press schedules, by celebrations that arrived with flashbulbs. But those early years also carried a quiet contract. You are royal, and you will represent. For their father, Prince Andrew, Duke of York, the promise was high. For their mother, Sarah Ferguson, the challenge was to bridge royalty and relatability. The daughters witnessed both, the trappings of status and the undercurrent of expectation. Yet neither learned an explicit exit strategy for when status collapsed. When scandals began to surface, first for their mother, then for their father, the palace shielded them only partially. The privilege remained, the protection did not. For Beatrice and Eugenie, what was once a clear path became uncertain terrain. Their public roles diminished, their funding streams shifted, their royal identities began to fracture. And this was not their choice, but the cost was theirs to pay. The turning point is familiar. Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Verified sources show that in 2019, Andrew stepped back from public duties. Titles and honors were stripped by royal declaration. The withdrawals were void of procession, but the damage had been done. Public trust evaporated, media narratives hardened. The Yorks, once peripheral but proud, became peripheral and precarious. It is within this context that the ordeal of the sisters emerges. Reports suggest that the palace, under pressure from public opinion, began to treat Beatrice and Eugenie differently. Their roles were no longer framed as future state servants. They were sidelined, not banished, but forgotten. Internal royal sources, unattributed, say William and Kate, the working royals, are uneasy with their proximity to scandal. These are not facts the palace publishes. They are pressures it quietly manages. The ancestral home, Royal Lodge, becomes a symbol. Secured by a 75-year lease signed in 2003, it cannot easily be vacated. It remains Andrew's base, a grand property in Windsor Great Park. Meanwhile, the palace contemplates a future centered not on the Yorks, but on another line entirely. Beatrice and Eugenie inhabit this physical and symbolic space. They live within its walls, yet are increasingly defined by what it represents: legacy without power. In public interviews, Beatrice has turned professional, entering tech and finance. Eugenie has supported charitable ventures, lived in Windsor, married this year, and mothered a daughter. On the surface, normalcy. But beneath, the same dynamic plays out. They were born into royalty, but the institution that birthed them no longer needs them. Each appearance, each smile, each outing is quietly scored by expectations of disassociation. When the palace decided that the Yorks were too exposed to remain within the immediate orbit, its answer was not expulsion, but elimination of role. Not a public break, but a slow fade. Titles revoked, duties cancelled, public funding reduced. None of it outright declared, very little of it officially acknowledged, and therein lies the power of modern royal containment. Royal biographer Andrew Lowney suggests that pressure may come increasingly through property and privilege. The lease cannot be cancelled without consequence, but the cost of staying rises. Maintenance, security, silence all become burdens. Meanwhile, bespoke announcements are cancelled, rumored to avoid giving Andrew visibility. The home he occupies becomes a gilded island, still fenced, still royal, but emptied of institutional meaning. For Beatrice and Eugenie, the geography is telling. They live in the shadow of the home their father cannot relinquish. They visit with family, but their future is not there. The palace's focus rests elsewhere. Their proximity to privilege has become their predicament, like children of deposed kings living in a palace that no longer welcomes them. In the data of monarchy, Beatrice and Eugenie's professional lives are often lauded. They pay taxes, earn salaries, live what many would call normal lives. But normal in a royal context means being removed. Their identities as princesses without portfolios render them invisible in a system built to bestow purpose. They attend charity events, pose for photos, but there is no active role. Unverified sources claim that meetings convened at Royal Lodge to discuss the sisters' status were tense. They say that Eugenie withdrew from such a meeting. None of this has been independently confirmed, but the narrative exists. It reflects how power works, not by decree, but by rumor management. And for the sisters, this process is both invisible and inescapable. In interviews, Beatrice has spoken of using her bit of royal experience to help others. Eugenie has said she aims to live privately, serve quietly. Both statements carry the weight of negotiation between what they were born to be and what they are asked to become. Publicly respectable, privately redefined. What is the emotional toll of being royal when the institution recedes from you? There are no surveys on this, no formal reports, but from what we can see, a diminished status, a public role evaporated, a ledger of privilege stripped of meaning. The jewels they once wore no longer shine as badges of purpose, only as reminders of what they inherited and what they lost. In the corridor of Royal Lodge, if you listen, you might hear doors closing. A photo of the sisters, once taken at a gala, now sits untouched. Invitations arrive, but fewer hands reach for them. The camera's glare moves on. Their lives continue, in boarding schools, in London apartments, in charity events, but the roof that once sheltered their future has changed its allegiance. Consider this moment, a tiara locked in a vault, its reflections fading, and beside it a necklace they both once wore, now unused. The symbolism is stark. Privilege stored, not displayed. Identity archived, not lived. The House of York was never the first or the second in the line of succession, but it carried its own relevance. Now it carries its own reckoning. Beatrice and Eugenie are not the architects of this collapse, yet they are the survivors. They navigate a world where family means title, but title no longer means role, where lineage once promised legacy, now it yields limbo. They might live in Windsor, yet their future is inscribed elsewhere, in private offices, in charitable boards, in the quiet assertion of self rather than spectacle. Their retreat is not failure, it is adaptation. But adaptation in monarchy always comes at a cost. The cost of visibility, the cost of expectation, the cost of belonging and then being left.
The camera zooms out. The gates of Royal Lodge close for the night. The grounds are dark, the windows dim. On the horizon, Windsor Castle still stands, fortress and symbol. But beyond its walls, a branch of the dynasty waits, not in exile, not in power, not quite in the picture. And so I leave you with this. What happens to royalty when the role fades before the relation does? What becomes of two sisters born to serve an institution that no longer serves them? In the end, when the crown turns away, who carries the weight of its legacy? And who walks away into silence?